Well, good morning, model railroaders. Welcome back to the Lower Alabama Railroad. I've been doing quite a bit of work on the railroad in the last few months, so I thought I would do a layout update for you. But before doing so, I thought you might be interested in the history of the Lower Alabama Railroad. So let's get started. This whole thing goes back to Christmas 1959. I was 5 years old and I got my first electric train set. It was a Marks 464 Hudson set, and I played with that along with my older cousins for several years. And then after we moved away, just played with it by myself. And that continued on through high school. And at that point, I have no idea what happened to it after I went off to university. And that was the end of model trains for me until this time of year 9 years ago. My son and daughter-in-law had 3 daughters and had just had a first son born. Joshua Tyler was about 3 months old at Christmas, and my son Jeremy and his family came down to visit for Christmas, and they brought a little battery-powered train set for Joshua Tyler that his sons had played with. Now, of course, at 3 months old, Joshua Tyler could care less, but his sisters loved the train. So after the first year, first time the girls came over to spend the weekend with us, we went to Hobbytown and I bought a Lionel Penn Flyer ready to run set. That started it all. After telling one of my buddies, who's also a train collector, how much the girls loved the trains, he ended up gave me 2 trains from his collection. And let's sit here. And that, you can see them sticking out of the engine shed. It was a Budweiser GP9 set and a Santa Fe set with passenger cars. And he said that the girls would love it because it was so colorful, and they did. Well, about that time, I discovered eBay, and the rest is history. So about 6 years ago, one of my other granddaughters was here with me, and we started building the table. And she was right out here with every step of the way helping me put this thing together. Well, her family ended up moving back to Kansas City, where her dad had gotten a new job. So it was pretty much left up to me at that point. And then about 5 years ago, Shanna started getting on me. Maybe it was 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. She started getting on to me because I hadn't done anything. So I got busy and the Lower Alabama Railroad was born. There's been, since it was deemed complete, there's been quite a few additions added to it. So let's go ahead and I'll give you an update on the whole railroad. Let's start over on this side. This part has not changed hardly at all, just minor changes. We did add the topiary bunny and change the name to Bunnyville, but pretty much everything else stayed the same over here. Did add lights to the farmhouse, lights to the Rico station, which we'll show you in a minute. And this was one of the bigger additions. And this is a Menards J. Shepherd's and Sons dog food factory. This is pretty cool. And it's even got Jack the German Shepherd on it, as most of the Menard stuff does. And then we continued over on this side. The next thing that was done was this little pond area, which I called Meteor Pond because it looked like the top of a mountain had been blown off. And I was pretty pleased with that. That's all made out of scrap foam. And now the big addition, which just finished this past week, is Blue Mountain. The Blue Mountain and Blue Mountain Tunnel. Design criteria for this was threefold. It had to accommodate the big boy coming out on this curve when the boiler was articulated over. So that tunnel portal is actually two portals. I cut one in half and then took the other one and cut the center section out to make this wider. The second criteria was that minimal impact to Meteor Pond. Third criteria was I wanted it to look halfway decent. And I think that all of the design criteria were met. This part was on the corner before I started the construction of the tunnel. I'd added this pylon that I got because I got it pretty cheap because there was no airplane. But I got online and I found a pack Top Gun Maverick that had Maverick's Mustang and a Hornet. And they fit the rod perfectly, and they look pretty good going around. A lot of the stuff that was on this corner got relocated, including, the pine trees and whatnot. And I think this all turned out pretty well. Had to put an extension onto the table again so that this would all fit. And looks pretty nice. Now, jumping off of the layout for a minute and back to the workbench, I told you that my first train was a Marx 464. Well, I found one on eBay, had to have it. This is the oldest locomotive in my collection. I'm guessing it's 60 years or so. And it's disassembled right now for some maintenance and repair. Coming back over to the table, or on the layout right now, right here is the second oldest locomotive. This is a Marx. This actually belonged to my younger cousins. They're about 12, 13 years younger than me. Somehow, at some point, this ended up with my sons. And when my oldest son ended up moving a few years ago and was cleaning out the attic, he found a box of train stuff that had this locomotive in it. It still runs pretty good, and it's probably in the neighborhood of 50 years old. And at the same time, in the same box, was the Redwood Valley Express. This was a train that I'd gotten my boys when they were younger, and I guess this was probably the mid to early 80s. It needed some restoration work, and I did that. Most of it was rebuilding the crane, but the locomotive, this was about the cheapest low-end General Lionel ever made. It was DC powered, so there was no E unit or anything in it. When I rebuilt it, I put an E unit in it, and I added some more details, the steam pipes and whatnot from later models, and this little rascal runs pretty good now. Well, back to the layout. Made some changes here to the control panel, mainly adding accessory switches for the stuff that we've added. On this corner, this was actually my first hill that I built, again using leftover styrofoam that actually came from a set of pots and pans that my wife bought from Pampered Chef. Had lots of styrofoam, so I watched a video from a lady in the UK, Jenny Kirk, on how to turn trash into scenery, and this was my first endeavor at that, and I think it turned out pretty darn good. On the back here, some of the trees that were located when I redid the tunnel. And here, cool accessory, the billboard with the guy, when it's turned on, his little arm goes up and down like he's changing out the billboard on it. Got a little truck, and I used cardstock and business cards to make a ladder rack for it. And then built this little gravel road to give him access up to it. Added these trees and rocks and whatnot. And we swing around to this edge. This is another recent addition. This is a relocation, which you'll see from in a minute. Telling you to visit Bunnyville, home of the world's largest topiary rabbit. This got moved over here, and along with some more of the trees and the rocks that were relocated from the other side. Back door of the engine shed. One of the spurs, got a 44-tonner sitting there. Here's another new piece that was added. This is a L.A.R.R mobile crane model kit, little snap together thing. Not a high scale model by any stretch of the imagination, but it looks kind of cool. Then I've got the little welding pad out back behind the engine shed. And coming on around, not much changed here till we get down here. And this was a piece that got relocated from the other corner when I built the mountain. And here was my second piece of scenery being done with the leftover foam. Made a little mountain. Have, if you look real close, you can see there's a herd of deer up there overlooking things. And again, I was pretty darn pleased with the way this turned out. This turned out even better than the other one. Seems like each piece that I did got a little better, so I'm happy with that. And coming down on this side, we have the marshalling yard. And this was a fairly recent addition. This was a Lionel scrapping scene. It's animated. And to put that in, I had to take this spur off the round table or turntable and extend it down and around to here, and got the little burrow crane added to help the guys out. Added a figure over there taking a break on the steps. The next edition, I picked this up last year at the local train show. I thought it looked pretty cool. And then I found these little oil drums on eBay, and I added those. And here is the new billboard that I just put in. This is where the Bunnyville billboard had been. This one, again, is animated, and when it's turned on, it switches back and forth between the Snap-on tool truck and a dragster sponsored by Snap-on Tools. And coming around here to the farm, pretty much nothing changed here, other than, like I said, I put lights in the house and added that cool little mailbox there. And then just the, an overall look. Not, like I said, at this point, not much has changed, other than the roundhouse has been given lights, And we're going to sit here and I'm going to pause this for a second so I can get around, power everything up, and shut the lights off so you can see this thing in the dark.